Hi, welcome to Revive Ministries. It's a special day because this is going to be um, the month of February, but also it's a special episode because it's we're going to be just talking about World Cancer Day, and I have a good friend coming back today. World Cancer Day is aims to save millions from preventable deaths each year by raising awareness and education about cancer. The month of February, Revive Ministries is focusing on how our relationships have a lot more to play in our wellness than we like to admit sometimes. Here are some useful links if you want to know more. It'll also be included into the description at the end when this gets uploaded on February 4th, which is World Cancer Day. But before we begin, I want to also put a nod to those people locally, things that have helped me. And I want to give a mention to Healthy Flagler, Creation Life now, and Forgive to Live. The church I attend has been incredibly healing for me when I first got there about a year or so ago. And the person today is part of that. And he's been vital in me kind of getting back my wellness. And I just want to say thank you, Rick, for coming back and being part of this, Rick.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Robert, for the opportunity.
No problem. And I know those who are listening, I'd always do a disclaimer because we live in an uncertain time, so if you are in crisis, I encourage you to please seek immediate professional help. Through the hotline, there is the 1-800-273-8255. It's National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I also encourage you to check what is locally available to you. I'm a NAMI executive board member, and I do facilitate virtual support groups that can be that little stopgap when it comes to crisis. But as tradition, Rick, I don't think I want to start off with a quote, and this quote really said a lot to me. It says, especially when it comes to relationships, and one of the relationships when we begin our lives are our family. So this is a quote from Anthony Brand, and he says, "Other things may change us, but we start and end with the family." What's your take on that, Rick? What are your thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote, and I commend the person who was inspired to write that, because I agree with that 100%. And looking back now at my health journey, it was my family that knows, your family knows you better than anyone else. Even they know you better than yourself sometimes, because they know what things are your trigger points. They know what things make you sad, what things make you happy. And they really are the ones rooting for you. They're like your cheerleaders, and they want you to succeed. They want you to be well. And even at times when you don't feel or you can't see it in your mind's eye that where the end is, they see the light for you, and they help you to stay on that path and to reach your goal.
When I think of wellness, is always think about it holistically. There has to be not just one thing helps me, in my recovery. It's a culmination. A lot of times in my groups, we talk about coping skills, but on this journey, I know we talk about this quote, but I want to talk about connections. I kind of got to the wrong slide, but our connections matter more than we'd like to admit, right? Sometimes the most painful moments happen to be the ones closest to us, but it also could be the most precious ones. Unfortunately, the people who've come to this podcast, and I always appreciate everyone who comes, because it's hard to be this transparent. But also, I've known that some of those people didn't have the happy family, they didn't have the happy surroundings. But at the same time, there's a difference between the house and the home, right, Rick? There's a difference between the house and the home. So when I think of this, how do you manage this contrasting things? Because when this uploads, we just got through the holidays. So anything you want to mention as you
Yes. Well, as you were preparing that question, a lot of thoughts came to my mind, and the first one was, when you are diagnosed with cancer, it just
Mhm.
changes you from the inside out. It changes the person that you are mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I had to really dig down deep to find out who I was as a person. Did I identify with my position at work, with the things that I had, or am I much more than those parts put together? And I also thought about my friends and people who I thought were my friends. And I found out the true reality is that some of the people didn't contact me for 6 months. I could have passed away during that time, not even one text or one phone call. But people I hadn't heard from in more than 10 or 15 years, it was those people that came to the forefront and they offered their help, whether they came physically in person to see me or monetarily or just an encouraging word at a phone call. And I realized then the things that matter. And you had talked in your question about how do you make that connection versus home. And it was my wife and my daughter that I credit with making that transition for me. Because when I was at the hospital, as you know, it's a very stark, sterile environment, and you kind of feel like you're not in your normal surroundings. You feel isolated. And my wife would transform my room into like a spa-like atmosphere. And she would use like essential oils on the diffuser. Some of the scents that I like were eucalyptus, which is very fresh, and frankincense, which is very aromatic, and mint, and even lavender to help me relax and help me to focus on healing. But she would do that for me because, you know, when you're the patient, when you're the one going through it, you're not thinking about the total picture. All you're thinking about is the pain you're feeling and what you're going through. But I thank God for my wife that she thought about the surrounding, the environment, which is part of creation life. And she made it a point to put me in a calm environment that I could just focus on being peaceful and being healing. My daughter was also a huge part of that, and she would come to my bedside and she'd make me laugh with her funny stories, or she would take time to read me a devotional and just inspire me to think about God and to just keep my focus not so much on my current situation, but on the future and what God can do in my life. And I just appreciate that so much. And not many people know this because it's kind of a private family thing, but we had just come from such a pivotal high in our family. My daughter had just graduated from the university with her bachelor's degree just 3 weeks before my diagnosis. And we were living life large, and we were planning to take a trip to Hawaii, the family, to celebrate. And then 3 weeks later, our world just comes crashing down. And it just really took its toll on us as a family. It seems like our dreams were shattered. But we got through it.
Yeah.
And what stood out to me was that she put her life on hold, my daughter Chloe, and she was supposed to go to finish her schooling in grad school, and she put that on hold to take care of her papa. And that just spoke volumes to me about relationships, about all the years that we invested in our daughter. And at a time that I needed her most, she was there for us. And she helped my wife make the meals and prepare everything, the juices that I needed. And we did it together as a family. So that was huge, making that connection, those relationships, right with the people who are in your immediate surroundings. Sometimes we think we have to establish relationships with people outside our home or with, you know, a wider circle. We start right there in the home. That's where it matters the most.
I love what you said about environment, and I was going to lead into safe place, but yeah, environment is huge. Peace of mind is never valued as much as we'd like to. It's always about stuff, about titles, about getting somewhere, but really, peace of mind I found in my life to be vital. There's the one quote I shared with you was, "The good news is only as good as the bad news was." Sounds so convoluted. But the problem with that is that if I lost 50 cents, Rick, and I gained it back, it's nice, but it's not great. But I remember one time I did a group, I don't know, like a month ago, the person said, "Does that mean I have to have hard things happen to appreciate good things?" I'm like, no, but unfortunately, a lot of times we forget to be grateful for what we do have. Right. When we have that contrasting thing in our lives, that pivotal moment when we actually see what is important. A lot of us right now are even though it's been months after COVID started, we still are in this huge uncertainty of what's next. Some of us are struggling. So the good news is only good, as the bad news was. Actually, in a weird way, makes sense to me because it promotes the idea of gratitude,
Mhm.
and being grateful. I've never seen. I know you work a lot with people. I've never seen all people heal, grow in their wellness, whether it's physical or mental, when all they talk about is what they don't have. You know, well, everything is about what they don't have, what they should have, what could have, instead of what I'm going to do. You know, I liked what you said before about the idea of the environment, but also the idea that you had purpose. You know, you had a direction. You know, I mentioned this last time you were here sharing your entire story, and I it is hard. It's hard to kind of sift through it, but at the same time, I just remember um, Viktor Frankl. I read that book and I am so appreciative. He's a psychiatrist. He was in Auschwitz, and
Yeah.
the one thing he realized: the ones who've made it who made it out of there, survived, were the ones who had hope.
Amen.
The only ones who could see past that. And so that is just
You have to see it and believe it in your mind's eye.
yeah. Any thoughts? Any one thing you want to add or comment? You know, I want to give you a chance to when you think about the idea of this contrasting idea. Good news is only as good as bad news was, and the idea that gratitude is more helpful when it comes to wellness. How's that experience been for you?
Yes, I agree, and I feel that isolation is so counterproductive to healing. We often think in our mind that we can do it ourselves, that we have what it takes, but in reality, we don't. We always fall short. And God created us to be social creatures, to be interactive, to laugh with one another, to smile, to hold hands, to
Mhm.
talk, to listen, and you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you don't feel so alone. So
Yes.
I feel that that is key to success. That He wants us to feel that connection. You had mentioned earlier about pain that we go through, and
Yeah.
I wanted to just elaborate on that just to touch more. And there was one instance when I was in the hospital that I was so weak I couldn't even bathe myself,
Hmm.
and I needed assistance. And of course, my wife was right there with me, so it was a private, intimate moment. And I'm sharing this with you because I feel safe sharing this, and
Hmm.
also that it may help somebody who's listening to know what it is that I felt as a cancer patient. And my self-esteem and my self-worth was very low,
Hmm.
and I felt that my self-image was distorted, and I would look at myself in the mirror and just say, "Who is that guy?" And I was so thin, I was bald, I was emaciated, I had a look of pallor, and I was so thin that you could count the ribs in my rib cage. And I didn't want anyone to look at me, not even my wife. And I was so embarrassed that she had to bathe me, and she just took care of me so tenderly and so lovingly, and she would just rub my back very softly, and she would whisper softly in my ear, "I still love you. You're still the most handsome man that I know."
Hmm.
And those things, that those connections, that love that we shared, it came full circle. When we shared our vows, we never knew that we would go through sickness and in health, and richness or in poorness, that all those things would come to play in our actual life, in our actual marriage.
Hmm.
And in sharing that moment with you, I'm giving you a window into what it feels like to go through something so harsh that I never wish this on anybody, to go through something like that, that you feel worthless, you feel like you have no purpose. And you mentioned about having purpose, and having those relationships and those connections was what gave me purpose in life. It gave me the will to live. And people can say, "You're going to make it. God is with you."
Hmm.
And that gave me courage to go on.
That is, that is always inspiring when you always look at something that happens to you and then you see you could go two ways. You can see it as it's the end, it's just over, I'm done, or as an opportunity to connect further with the ones around you. And
Yeah.
it's because for me, I remember you were at my wedding, and my brother told me that story about the kid that was close to me who got in a car accident, and I remember that the talk was very, let's just like, everyone's like, I'm gonna be there for him, and then it died down.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, I didn't my brother didn't know when he made that speech, but the person passed away like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing was, thinking about it, it really shows what, now, what is really important, like when it comes to our lives. And for when we think of wellness, we think about medicine, treatment, and stuff like that, but we don't think about our relationships and what's around us. And I feel it's very important for us to talk about that. And this is the last real quote I'm going to kind of ask you to kind of put your thinking cap on and share what your thoughts of this quote. Everyone knows that fear is never a good thing when you're just consumed by it. It's necessary if you're out and about and you notice that something's danger, you leap out of the way. But at the same time, when it's constantly dictating where you go, what you do, what you don't do, I feel like that can be a big obstruction of your own wellness, and even the fear of even connecting with those around you. So, like you were actually kind of sharing when you were at that point.
Yeah, fear is very real, and as a cancer patient, that is always looming in the back of your mind. Is this treatment going to work? What is the next CAT scan going to reveal? What is the next blood test going to reveal? Am I going to get better? Am I going to get worse? If I get worse, who's going to take care of my family? The financial aspect. Am I going to leave my family in a huge debt with all the hospital bills? And like you mentioned, Robert, yes, the medicine helps, and the care that you receive from the doctors and the nurses. But in a holistic world, holistic beings that we are, is much more than that. It's also the spiritual component, the prayers that are said on your behalf that kind of help you ease your fears and help you feel connected to a higher power, to God, the God of heaven, the creator, and he knows everything about you. So if he made me, why should I fear? Because I know that even knows the number of hairs on my head, even though they're a little bit less now. But he knows everything about us, so why should I fear? It says perfect love casts out fear in the Bible, and I really believe that. And that verse really came to the forefront in my healing journey, because I had to constantly remind myself to cast out the fear. Relationships are key, is the fundamental part of the healing process. So there's the medicine, there's the people in your life, the people, the healthcare professionals who are there, and then there's the holistic component with treating your fears and keeping you focused on positive thinking. And then your diet changes, everything about your mindset.
Yeah.
But I came across this interesting study that I read about some children in an orphanage. And it just really, I think it applies in this situation, that there was two groups, and these babies in the first group, they were, all their physical needs were met, right? They were fed on a schedule, and they were changed, and they got the bare minimum. And then the babies in the second group, they were fed as well, and they were changed, but they added the additional component of some holding time.
Yeah.
And the nurses would hold them, and they would talk to them, and they would look at them in their eye, and they would connect with them. And after a period of time, they noticed that the babies in the second group were thriving, and they were more alert, and they were aware of their environment, and they were actually progressing at a much faster rate than the babies who were just fed and changed. So that proves to me that God created us, even as a baby can tell the difference, that if they're being loved, if they're important, if they are being stimulated, their mind to think, to act, and to respond to voices. And so we're the same way, adults, we're just big babies.
Yeah.
And we need that connection in order to thrive and to have purpose in life.
Yeah, I really like what you're with the story you told about the two groups of kids. I just know from my own pool, I deal with, I facilitate, people who are suffering with mental health issues in groups, but also there's lots of substance use disorders that tie into that. And one of the things that I've noticed is even a lot of them face a lot of traumas. And sometimes the funny thing is this: you get 4 women who got domestically abused,
Mm-hmm.
and they put them in a safe place,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk and they share. Nothing has been solved, but they feel better. Why? Like, for me, like, that's the undercurrent, and that's where faith comes in. That's
Right.
where faith comes in, because it's unexplainable. Because the rational person's like, well, you gotta get this, you gotta get security. But the one thing that's constant in this life, Rick, is change. And the only thing that isn't the one thing that doesn't change is God. For me, I like to provide a safe place. For me, I want to inspire and encourage healing, whether it's wellness in your physical life, but I have a lot more experience in the mental health and side to things. But at the end of the day, it's our stories that matter. It's us sharing and learning and growing. I've never seen anyone really make leaps and bounds when they are not grateful for what they have or forgive someone who has hurt them. There's that need of a relationship. There's that need of connection. And I feel like that is why a lot of us, when we think of wellness, we kind of just look at it so linear, and it's not linear. It's a lot of different things.
You had mentioned earlier, Robert, about your wedding, and that was very special to me. That I was invited, first of all,
yeah,
and then to share in that special moment in your life, and get to see you with your significant other and the love that you share between you.
mm-hmm.
And I felt so included to be part of just that celebratory moment. And that's what relationships are about, Robert, as you mentioned. It's not only sharing the lows, but also sharing the highs, and just being part of that joyous moment. It really makes you feel connected, especially during this time of the COVID pandemic. It was great to get out of the house, even though we were all wearing masks. It was great to just be in the moment, be there in person, and to feel that positive energy with you and your family and all your friends. And it was just like a high energy moment. And I'm glad that I was alive and well to be there to support you as well.
It was a wonderful day, and for me, it was just wonderful that we could do it. There was a lot of uncertainty with everything going on, but the most important thing is our connections. A lot of times we kind of put less weight because, when we come to our relationships, there are risks. Rick, you talked about in the beginning, it is a risk. Sometimes you get hurt, but at the same time, our precious moments are the ones who are closest to us. I remember there was this one person in church who had Parkinson's disease, and I used to visit him and just watch the football game and pray with him. I watched, like, it was a Sunday. I watched, and I remember I didn't know if he could hear me, but I was just there. That was it. I was just there. I know I shared some of the verses that I was kind of I was learning. I think I was connecting in that way with my faith, but also being tactful, because the thing is, when I was telling my story before about my recovery, it was hard. Do I divide my story into 2 different stories? But no, my story is all of it. It's all together, and that only happens when you have a safe place, and is a huge in recovery, and relationships can provide that. As we wrap up, Rick, I know you have, I think, as we wrap up, anything you want to share with the listeners, and then we'll kind of dive into what you're involved in. We're going to talk about Healthy Flag a little bit, as we wrap up?
Yes. So three things. The first is to talk about safety, and that is such a vital component for recovery and for healing. And I remember that being in the hospital room, and I always reference this because that was such a trying time for me, being so isolated from my family and friends. And I always felt safe when someone was in the room with me. I always felt that I was going to be okay. And sometimes I was so tired because I was heavily medicated. I was in a lot of pain with the shots. They gave me daily injections, and they would access my port, and I can actually feel it going in. And I also had a port in my head for prophylactic treatments, and it was quite intense. But sometimes somebody would be talking to me, and I would just fall asleep in mid-conversation because I was so tired. But it was not anything against them. It just meant that I felt so safe in their presence that I felt peaceful enough to just doze off and know that I was safe in the room with them. And they were going to take care of me even if I was not conscious.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, I understand that. It just reminds me. We're heading into the holidays when this is getting recorded. I just remember my fondest memories includes being safe. Includes being safe. Safe has to be there. I remember Christmas time, all that stuff is just safe around your family. It's just one of those warm moments. But as we wrap up, is there? I remember I want to give you an opportunity, kind of, it's World Cancer Day. Anything you want to share those listening? Maybe those who may have someone who's suffering from cancer or is in the thick of it, or just got the news that they have cancer. They don't know what's next. Is my life over? What would you say to them right now?
So I would say your life is not over. There's life after cancer. People think of that diagnosis as terminal. And really, in the reality, there's so much technology out there. There's so much advances. And there's so many leaps and bounds of ways to treat people, especially now holistically. And you're going to be okay. It just changes your perspective. And one thing that changed for me was to make every day count. Time is precious, and I don't know how much time I have on this earth, but thank God I've been living 8 years post a diagnosis, and I'm thriving. So I'm just thankful for that. But I wanted to share an experience in closing that was really a defining moment for me to this day. And it was when my parents came to visit me. And they had coordinated it because I was going to be in the hospital for 3 weeks getting chemo treatment, and then home for 10 days to rebuild my white blood cells, and then back in the hospital for 3-week intervals and continue on for 8 rounds. So they timed it after my first round of chemo, and they were going to be home with me during my birthday. And we were so excited, and I was looking forward to that. It gave me hope to be out of the hospital. And wouldn't you know it, the very next day after I got home, I relapsed, and my white blood count dropped, and I had to be rehydrated. So they put me back in the hospital, and I was just depressed and upset because I knew my parents were coming, and it's not how I envisioned the reunion to be. So while I'm in the stretcher there in the clinic with the curtain drawn, I just felt so isolated and so depressed. And a thought occurred to me, saying, what if when my parents, they haven't seen me since my diagnosis, and I have physically changed. I was bald, and I was so skinny, and I had dark circles under my eyes. What if they don't recognize me? What if they start pitying me? And these thoughts of fear came over me. And then I knew the time they were going to arrive. I knew all their itinerary. So we sent our daughter to go pick them up because my wife stayed by my side. And it seemed like an eternity, because I knew they should be at the airport at this time. They should be driving to the hospital now. And then my daughter texted me that they had arrived downstairs. Like, okay, they should be on the elevator now. They should be walking through the hallway. And I was just like, the anticipation was killing me. And when the moment happened, when they drew back the curtain and they saw me for the first time, our eyes connected. And all I felt was pure unconditional love emanating from their eyes. And they recognized me, and they love me even in my horrible state with all these tubes connected to me. They just saw only me as their son. That just moved me to tears. And it just reminded me of the love that God has for us, that he sees us the same way, even though we have our sinful nature, even though we have scars in our past, whether physically or emotional, or things that we're struggling with.
Mhm.
God sees us through the eyes of love, and that's all that matters. And there's a place for you, there's hope, and when we're in Jesus Christ, and there's no fear, because when you're in Jesus Christ, he takes all of that away, and he gives you a new hope and a new perspective to live, abiding in his love.
I really appreciate you sharing that story, Rick. When I think about my faith journey, I just think about one pivotal thing is um, me is how I saw God. That was pivotal because how I saw him made me how I treat everyone else. It's fundamental. I think about the Good Samaritan. I think about
Mhm.
the unforgiving servant. I understand for me, um, it's not about me, and that's wonderful. And it sounds weird, but it's wonderful because that's what Revive Ministry is now. It's not about me. It's about me providing a safe place for people to share. That's it. It's so hard when we all just get so worked up on what's right. But we know that relationships are not they're ever changing. They're constantly changing. You cannot pinpoint. There's no secret formula to relationships, and that's the beauty of it. That's you continue to grow yourself, grow even closer and closer. And the wonderful thing is that you yourself begin to see the different things differently. And I feel
That's
in our faith journey, and I could testify that we continue to grow. It's a journey. When we stop looking at it as a destination, because
right.
that's what happens when we get. When I had a diagnosis, it was like, what was when is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? When am I going to get better? Instead of just going on the journey and finding the safe place with you, having the right relationships, right connection, because all of us are just trying to figure this out. At the same time, we have this incredible hope, incredible constant that never changes. That is God, and I appreciate you sharing that with us today, Rick. And I just want to also plug your Rick, Rick Verdigreens. Could you just share a little bit about what you've been up to and what you do with that?
Most definitely. I'm glad you asked. So, out of this, you could say negative diagnosis, so many positive things have happened. So, it gave me an opportunity to refocus my priorities. And one of the main things was my health and my wellness. And I learned about the benefits of juicing and doing wheatgrass shots and eating raw living foods. So, I've incorporated that into my daily life. And I figured, I cannot keep this to myself, and I felt that God wanted me to share it. I'm alive for a purpose, right? He just didn't heal me so I can go back to my same life that I had before. He wanted to recreate me into his image. So I started a little side business, and my wife and I said, well, what could we do to help others? So we decided to create a juice stand. So we went to the local farmers market, and we had a little folding table there with my juicer and my Vitamix blender, and we started bringing health and wellness to the community. And it was well received, and we were able to educate people on the importance of juicing specifically.
Mm.
And now it has really grown and taken off. And now I became a certified health coach, and I do health seminars, and I coach clients one-on-one, whether they're a cancer patient or whether they just want to lose weight or they want to live a vibrant, healthy life, or they want to start working out, but they want extra nutrients to boost their immune system. I mean, so many different avenues that juicing is good for. So we're here at your disposal, and you can contact us at Rick's Verde Greens. And I think that your life will be transformed, literally, spiritually, and figuratively. So I think now I have more energy than I've ever had. I was 47 at diagnosis. I'm 55, and I feel younger and vibrant more than ever. And my mind is alert, and I just feel that I'm open I'm just living life to the fullest, and I'm glad to be part of Healthy Flagler, of Creation Life, and all the principles are just so cohesive. You cannot have one without the other. You know, you have to have proper rest. You have to have those interpersonal relationships, which is what this topic is about today. It's those small things that keep you going. The environment that you surround yourself in. Is it a positive environment? Do you enjoy that sunshine coming through the window? Do you enjoy petting your dog? You know, it's just, where's your faith? Are you praying to God daily for inspiration? Are you living according to God's will? So when you have all these things unified and together, it makes you a whole person. And I feel that that's why I am not just existing anymore, I'm living. So be part of this movement of health and wellness, and feel free to contact us at Rick's Verde Greens.
Hmm. Yeah. I also, I just remember. I also want to mention "Forgive to Live." I, for one, I went to. I think only and another. A couple people have do a virtual one, and they're doing it every, I think, Wednesday. But for me, forgiveness is a huge part. You know, sometimes we hold on to stuff, and you have to. That's the holistic part that we were talking about. Me and Rick were talking about, and I really everything you're gonna everything that is here on the screen will be in the notes, and so you can reach out to for Rick's Verdigrin, and you can look at what Healthy Flagger is up to. I've been through the Creation Health through the older version, but I've also been through the Forgive to Live, and I find a lot of benefits because when we look at our wellness overall, it's us just piecing back the value that we think we lost. You know, when we talk about, some may not be faith based or not, but one thing I would urge people who are listening or watching, you have to have a why in life. Why do you do what you do? Because when you know the why, the how gets more bearable. And I feel like for me and Rick, it's our faith. It's why is our faith, and I always appreciate Rick you coming back. Any last little things you want to say to those listening as I wrap up? I'm sorry. Let me just.
Definitely. I just want to say to the listeners that to just reach out and make those connections, make those relationships flourish. Take time to invest in the people around you, whether someone that you haven't contacted in a long time. You make the first step, because that could be that other person might be hurting or feeling lonely, and maybe that only connection they have to God is you. So you can make a difference in their life, and the people that are currently in your life, continue to nourish those relationships and enjoy each other's company, because like I said earlier about being invited to your wedding is in sharing the highs and the lows, and that's what makes friendships, that's what makes you feel that life is worth living. So I would say continue to connect with those in your circle of influence and to connect with God.
Thank you again, Rick. I just want to tell those who are listening, you can always reach out to and find out what we are doing in Revive Ministries through reviveministriesfl.com. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries, and we're going to leave you with this last quote. I find it kind of interesting. It's from Nelson Mandela. I want you to kind of listen to this. It says, "Live life as though nobody's watching, and express yourself as though everyone is listening." It is kind of, for me, it's how we best connect. And then again, this is goodbye for Revive Ministries. Till next time.